To the point, informative, entertaining, and protecting the Second Amendment. Welcome back to Elster's Rifles and Reloading. And I'm going to make sure that we are live here and to make sure everything is running smoothly. So just give me a second.
There's something so sexy about him.
There is definitely something not sexy about that at all. Let's see here. So let me make sure my sound is working. So it looks like we're good to go there. And we are in part 2 here, teaching my good friend here, Scott P. with EP Integrations. He's a whiz with a CNC machine, but pretty new with the whole reloading aspect of it, right?
Yep, this is my first time.
Yep, it's first time reloading. And we're getting them up to speed here in regards to, in part 1 here. If you guys happen to miss that, you can check out my video playlist here in part 1, teaching Scott how to reload. We are reloading for his, it's an AR-15, what is it?
DPMS recon.
DPMS recon, that's right. And 5.56 chamber. And we pulled some Lake City brass, and we culled the brass, and we deprimed the brass using the FW Arms decapper over here. And then we got that into the stainless steel wash and got it dried. And now we're up to the point of annealing, and we're going to remove the crimp. And, you know, for those that are absolutely new to the game here, and I kind of snapped a little picture here of what the crimp is. I got a close-up picture. You can actually see they'll actually crimp in the primer cup. And they do that for one main reason, is to make sure for military rounds, military grade ammunition, that they crimp in that primer so it doesn't blow out, especially when that guy's life is on the line. You need really reliable ammunition. And the last thing you want is the primer blowing out, and what they'll do is crimp that into place. But with that being said, in order for us to reload and get that new primer put back into its spot, we need to remove that crimp. And, you know, back in the day when I first started, I used to use a Dillon Super 600. Matter of fact, I will still use this if I'm doing a large batch, something like, you know, 1,000 pieces. If I'm doing some more, you know, shit hit the fan type of thing, I'll probably use a Dillon Super 600. Spray and pray type of ammunition. But when it comes to, at least my precision reloads, I'm usually reloading in batches of 50 or 100. And I actually like to cut out the crimp using these RCBS cutters here. And I just personally like to cut them out rather than swaging. When it comes to the Dillon Super 600, you're physically moving the brass. You're physically moving the crimp out of the way by using the Super 600. You're swaging the brass. And like I said, it works great, but every once in a while you'll get one that doesn't swage just right, and you'll still get a hiccup when you go to seat that new primer. And at least for me, I found that cutting out the crimp just works better for me. And you can, matter of fact, use the inside chamfer bit here to cut it out if you like. But I highly recommend getting these RCBS cutting bits here. Matter of fact, I took a picture of that too. And they make one for large primer pockets and small primer pockets. Obviously, we're loading for 223 or 556. So I have the small inserted on the Lyman Case Prep Center, one of the best case prep centers, in my opinion, especially for the new reloader. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to cut out the crimp, and then we're going to uniform the primer pocket to make sure that that primer seats just below flush. You want that primer to seat just below flush, not at flush, and definitely not sticking out. If that primer sticks out past the primer, the primer pocket, you can actually go what's called a slam fire. And when that, especially in a semi-automatic, when that bolt comes home with force, if that primer is sticking out past flush, you can go what's called a slam fire. And it can actually ignite the powder before it's even in the chamber. And that's not going to be a good day. Trust me when I say that. So we're going to have Scott remove the crimp on all 50 pieces here. And then after that, we're going to use the EP 2.0 annealer to anneal all 50 pieces. At least we're going to try to get all that accomplished here in this part of the series. And then in the next part, we're going to lube up that brass and size it and get it back into the wash to get that lube off the brass. So let me just see who is rolling in here. And it looks like Alaska 1 Andy is 1. He is the first in the chat room saying hello there. We also got Brian Mark saying hello. Warren G is here. Ramsey Country is here. He's saying, I got my Annealer, Todd. It looks great. I'm hoping to get it to run in the next week or so. Thank you, brother. And I'm glad you got that EP 2.0 Annealer. As a matter of fact, if you're interested in buying the EP 2.0 Annealer, check out the description box below. I have links down there, not only showing how I use the EP 2.0 Annealer using the glow method, but I also have the links down there to take you directly to epintegrations.com so you can make that purchase. And right now, we just burned through the latest batch here. We had a pretty substantial batch that we kind of burned through, didn't we?
Oh yeah, it went pretty quick.
Yeah, and they're selling out. The second we load them up, they're gone.
Gone.
Yeah, they're gone instantly. So we are currently working on the next batch here. Matter of fact, what were you doing today?
I was making the fences today.
Fences, and you were cutting holes in the cases, I believe, right?
Yeah, I did. Yep.
Yeah, so Scott's got a CNC machine, so he pops in all the holes into the cases for you guys and make sure everything is super precise to make sure that when you get your EP 2.0 Annealer, it's just perfect. So, so Shane is in the house. He says, love the Lyman Prep Center as well. In my opinion, it is the best do-all case prep centers that money can buy. You know, a lot of new reloaders, when they're asking me, what should I buy? I always say never buy a kit. And one of the first things I always recommend is the Lyman Case Prep Center. It just does a lot for the buck. So Chris Schrader is also in the house. And he says, just got mine today. Can't wait to try it. So we got 2 guys already in the chat room that have their EP 2.0 Annealers. And once again, thank you so much for your business. So let's just jump right into this. So like I said, we're going to be removing the crimp. We're cutting it out physically. But before we move on to that, I know in part 1, if you happen to miss that, you might want to go back and watch part 1. But we didn't have any fireform brass out of Scott's DPMS 556 Recon. And it has a NATO chamber on it, 556. It's not 223. And matter of fact, you can see it's got quite the generous headspace on it. And this is the fireform brass. I told him to go out and fire 4 pieces of brass. Pick those 4 pieces of brass off the ground. Those 4 pieces that are ejected out of that firearm are like gold in the reloading community. It tells you everything you need to know about that chamber. And, excuse me, that his brass is fireforming at 1.4585. And a lot of times, at least with my bump gauges, headspace gauges, when I measure most factory ammunition right off the shelf, it's usually measuring at 1.451. Matter of fact, we did that with some of Scott's factory ammo. We measured it, and it measured at 1.451, and it expanded to 1.458. It literally expanded 7 thousandths of an inch. And that's a lot. It's a lot to expand, especially in the precision world. That is a lot of extra gases escaping around the shoulder, out through the chamber, before that brass has an opportunity to seal off in the chamber. That's why they use brass, because the brass is malleable, expands, seals off in the chamber. Well, we were measuring that factory ammunition as 1.451, and it had to expand 7 thousandths of an inch, and that is definitely not precision. Usually with a semi-automatic or bolt action, we're trying to bump back from fireform roughly 3 to 4 thousandths of an inch. And usually with a bolt action, usually it's about 2 thousandths of an inch. So we're going to try and reduce the amount that brass has to expand to seal off in the firearms chamber to get more precise ammunition. So that's going to be in the next part 3 after this part of the series. So I thought I would just touch base with you, especially if you happen to be watching this series of teaching Scott how to reload. So let's get into this. And we got the Annealer kind of set up here with some test brass. We're going to go through that here in a little bit, but we have Scott's 50 pieces, and we kind of already did 2 pieces already. But let's get the chairs out of the way here, and I'm going to get you guys up close and personal. So let's move you up here. So Scott's going to remove the crimp on these 50 pieces. So let me see if I can get you a little bit closer here. So why don't you go ahead and go to town there, my friend. So it's right in the back here. So what he's going to do is, and I'll see if I can clip you out of here so some of you guys that are absolutely new get a little bit better idea. So he's physically cutting out the crimp, and now he's uniforming it on the uniformer. And the uniformer, what that does is it puts the primer pocket back into spec. So when we do seat the primer, we remove the crimp so that you can actually get the primer into the primer pocket. But the uniformer here will get that primer pocket back into spec so that when we do seat that primer, it seats just below flush. So while he's doing those 50 pieces, I'm going to grab the mouse right for you here, Scott. And I'm going to bring up the chat board here, see if anyone's got any questions. And if you're absolutely new to the game, jump in that chat room and, you know, so, hey, I'm new. I got a question on reloading, and I'll try my best to answer them, especially while Scott's doing these 50 pieces. See if I can get you guys a little bit closer here. So we got RR Sturge saying, checking in, saying hi. Got Frank M81 M82, man, that's an awesome name. Saying hello all. So RR Sturge is saying, checking out the local situation for supply is pretty depressing, and it definitely is depressing. Matter of fact, I just hooked up with a bunch of berry bullets today. I got another 100 berry bullets, 9mm and 45 ACP. Local Shields happened to get some in stock, so I went and hooked up with another 100 total bullets here from berry bullets. Pretty inexpensive. Let me see if I can get you guys a little bit closer here.
If anybody's really concerned about the ammo shortage, I'll tell you what to do. You ask your good buddy and neighbor
Yeah.
how to reload ammo, and then you use all of his stuff.
Yeah, and all of his components, right?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, we got good old Is Your Six covered roll in the house. He's saying hello. Like you have a sweatshop going for ammo making. So Matthew is asking, what's your profile picture? So my profile picture here is a guy grabbing the bull by the horns, and he's actually pulling the bull. I actually got a little cancer symbol. It's a cancer symbol for neck cancer. Some of you guys might know I went through my own bout of cancer here. I had a tumor on my spinal cord about the size of a woman's fist. And that's what that symbol represents. And this was my battle going through cancer. Me grabbing the bull by the horns, and not just grabbing the bull by the horns, but I was dragging that biatch right out of the hospital. So we're working our way through these 50 pieces. Now you can see what's nice about this Lyman Case Prep Center is the fact that all the pieces are standing straight up. It's not like something that, you know, goes off at a side and all the brass filings fall onto the bench. You can see all the brass filings fall on top of the Lyman Case Prep Center. So if you're absolutely new, you're thinking about buying that equipment, that's where this thing really shines, is the fact that all those brass filings just fall right on top of this, and you can actually sweep this up and sweep it right into this little tray here. And then you can notice as he goes between piece by piece, he's sweeping off the cutter and the uniformer. And the reason why he's doing that is you want to make sure you sweep it off every single time, because what you don't want is some of those brass filings sitting on top of the cutter or the uniformer and impeding how deep that uniformer is going into the primer pocket. So let me see who else is rolling in here. I'm going to grab some water here, and right after this we are going to do some annealing with the EP 2.0 annealer. So that's going to be exciting. So we got our tank here with the tank holder that comes with the annealer, and we use some very high quality Burnzomatic torch heads, and that comes with the kit, the torch head and the tank holder, obviously along with the annealer, and then the brass pan too. So it comes with a very generous sized brass pan here, and obviously the power supply, so you can get some power to get that Freedom Seeds reloaded. See what else we've got here. So Canderson saying, just got my annealer yesterday, plan to do some cases tomorrow. That is awesome. So we got 3 people, actually 4 people now with Rick with his Your 6 covered. Have EP 2.0 annealers, and good old Eagle Eye Shooting, he's got that thing automated now too. So we're going to see if we can get this thing automated for you guys, for those guys that want to use a hopper, don't want a single feed. That's also coming too. So we're really excited about getting this automated for some of you guys that don't want a single feed. Now, in my personal opinion, at least with the EP 2.0 annealer, you know, it's usually only taking about 6 seconds per anneal. In my opinion, I personally don't mind single feeding it. It's not a big issue for me, especially when I only reload in 50 or 100 pieces per reloading session anyways. But I know some of you guys do huge batches of like 500, 1,000 pieces, and yeah, I could see definitely you might want a hopper for that. But at least for me personally, I could really care less if it has a hopper. But it's all personal preference. And I don't know if Michael Deck is in the chat boards here. It looks like he's not, but he was one of the first testers to get the EP 2.0 annealer. And I just talked to him a couple days ago, and he says he's well over 50,000 pieces of annealed brass on his EP 2.0 annealer. And matter of fact, the first day he got it, he annealed 1,000 pieces of 50 BMG without any issue, no hiccups whatsoever. So Scott's burning through this. It looks like we got about 10-15 more pieces to go. But what do you think, Scott? We're probably gonna have the next batch here, and we're hoping probably about a week or so, maybe a little over a week. What do you think?
Well, I'm hoping that we can get, waiting on some parts right now, but hopefully we can get some out to the customers here in the next week and a half, and then after that, I think we'll be able to do even more.
Yeah, this next batch is a lot more substantial, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so we got this next batch rolling through. A lot of the machine parts are getting machined as we speak. So like your stopper blocks, the brass stopper block, the fence block, the shim plate, those are getting machined as we speak. It's a lot larger, substantial batch this next time around. And so for any of you that are interested in getting the EP 2.0 annealer, make sure you're checking out the description box below and send us an email. Say you're interested. We'll get you on an email list. And the second they are available, we'll send out that email to you guys. And we'll also post that on our website, www.epintegrations.com. And you can actually subscribe right on the website, so definitely make sure you're checking that out if you're interested in getting your hands on this EP 2.0 annealer. And it looks like good old Barry Danick's just rolling in saying hello. Hemi Scrub is also here saying how is it going all. So getting down to the nitty gritty here. You can see Scott's, you're just joining us. He's cutting out the crimp. This is military NATO Lake City brass that has a crimp that we need to remove, and then his uniform in the primer pocket. So those guys that are out there that have the EP 2.0 annealer and you've used it, what do you guys think of it? Let us know in the chat boards. So yeah, hopefully we can get that next batch out to you guys here really soon. We're kind of shooting for about a week and a half from now. And it would be such a substantial batch. Well, it should last us for a while in regards to making sure we got decent inventory on the website for sale. Tank Frank saying hello, hello, and is your 6 covered? I know he's got the EP 2.0 Annealer. As a matter of fact, one of the first 4 testers, and he says it works great. So when you're doing this, Scott, you feel some initial resistance, don't you? Like while it's cutting, and then once you can kind of feel when it's done cutting, kind of thing.
Yeah, you feel it grab just a little bit when you first start, and then it doesn't take too long, and then it feels kind of smooth.
Yeah, it kind of like you feel some initial resistance, like you feel it cutting out the brass.
Very little friction after it's cut out.
Yeah. Kind of gives you like a gauge of how long to go type of thing, right?
Yep.
So Jason Wagoneer is rolling in saying good evening, Todd and Scott. And if some of you guys don't know, Scott's last name starts with a P. He's the P in EP Integrations, and obviously most of you guys know me, Todd Elster or Elpers. That's where the E comes from, if you guys are curious about that with EP Integrations. Brian Mark saying, Rick, I sent you an email, so you better check that out. Is your 6 covered? So Dan Kiley is saying, I just got the Prime All repriming compound today. Did a few primers today that I'm going to test out tomorrow. Desperate times, man, isn't that the truth? Man, if you can get your hands on any type of components right now. And thank God I stocked up when I did. And if you guys aren't stocking up on your components, lesson learned. Next time these components come into play, you better make sure that you're stocking up when you can. So I got thousands and thousands of primers down here. So, and no, I will not send these to you. So stock up while you can, my friends.
Which means lots of teaching to Scott.
Yeah. I think that means Todd giving Scott a lot of free components. Is that what it is?
I think so. What are business partners for?
So Hemi Scrub saying, I got my EP 2.0 Annealer last Monday. Haven't got to use it yet. Been busy. And Jason saying, I just got done loading 33 rounds of 308 for a ladder test with Bargets and Burger 175s. Man, I wish we could do some shooting around here, but it's been so damn cold, hasn't it?
Below 0.
I mean, no joke, like, what was it, -30 with wind chill?
I think so, yeah.
Last week?
Just a few days ago.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's no ability to actually get outside and do some shooting. So hopefully in the next month here, we can kill this cabin fever and get out and actually shoot some of this reloaded ammunition. I'm curious to see how this shoots in your DPMS Recon.
Yeah, I'm really excited for that, actually.
So we're actually going to do some marginal load development now that we have some Fireform brass. And you can see here Scott's Fireform brass, 4 pieces. And they all came out super consistent. Matter of fact, I'll show you here. I got my headspace gauges. I got my insert for 223. So let me grab his 4 pieces here. And it's got quite the generous headspace on that DPMS Recon. It's usually my brass, especially in my wild chambers. They usually Fireform at roughly about 456, maybe 455. You can see his are going damn near clear up to 458. So let me make sure I'm zeroed out here. So this is this Fireform brass that was ejected. So 457. Let me grab another piece here. We got 4 total pieces of ejected brass. This one is 457. So 4575. So it's pushing that 458. And you can see where this is where this really starts to shine. As you can see, you can easily sweep this off right into this little cup here. And you can actually remove this cup and you can dispense of your brass filings. This other final piece was, yeah, so you can see how consistently it's expanding, 457. And we're probably going to bump this back 4 thousandths of an inch. So our target headspace is probably going to be in that 453-ish mark. Somewhere's right around there when we do resize this brass. At least that will be our target headspace for this particular brass. So we're good to go there. So we got the crimp removed. We got the primer pockets uniformed. So now we're going to go on to annealing this brass. I'm going to move you guys over to the other side and get you guys up close and personal as best as I possibly can. All right, so Scott has actually never annealed before. So this is his first time annealing, even though he's obviously familiar with the EP 2.0 annealer. He's actually never annealed before. Now, at least for me, when I anneal, I like to use what's called test brass. And I know a lot of you guys have seen this before, but some of you guys might have not. And this is brass that I pulled out of my bad brass bin. This is brass that I was going to throw away anyways. And I took a handful of brass out of that bin. And this is brass that's either been fired too much or been annealed too much. And I'm going to use this test brass to set up not only the location of the torch head or the flame, we're also going to get that hotter blue inner flame roughly about 1 inch long. And then we're also going to use this test brass to set the glow. And that's where playing around with the speed control comes into play. But in order to do that by using the glow method, we need to dim down the lights a little bit. So I'm going to have to turn down the lights down here a little bit. And this is test brass. It's already destroyed. I don't care if I destroy it. It's already been destroyed. I'm literally just going to use this to set up the EP 2.0 annealer to get it. So when we actually do the real deal, this actual shiny reloaded brass here, that it's super consistent. At least on the first piece, or we might have to tweak that up or down ever so slightly. But by using that test brass, we're going to get it so it's within roughly 1 or 2 digits on the digital display here. So if you want to go ahead and stoke up that torch head there, Scott. So I'm going to start dimming down some of the lights here. So you can see with the torch, there's a outer flame and then there's a hotter blue inner flame. And we're going to try and get that hotter blue inner flame roughly a little over 1 inch long. So you can see that hotter blue inner flame is roughly about 1 inch long. And we're going to let that run for just a little bit. We want to make sure that that flame is running consistently. So we're going to let that run for maybe about another 30 seconds, and it seems like it's pretty consistent. It's not dipping up, it's not dipping down. It's roughly staying consistent at 1 inch. So that looks pretty good. Now we're purposely going to run the speed low. Remember, this is test brass. It's already been destroyed. We don't care if we over anneal it. It's already destroyed. On the first piece of brass, we're purposely going to run this slow so it gives us more time. The drum isn't spinning fast. It gives us more time to set the location of the flame and to get the flame pointed directly where the neck meets the shoulder. And one thing you don't want is that hotter blue inner flame touching the brass. So if this decapping pin was a hotter blue inner flame, you want it pointing directly where the neck meets the shoulder, and get this about a little over 1 inch long. And you do not want that hotter blue inner flame touching the brass. You want it just so it's maybe ever so slightly off the brass, maybe 1/16 of an inch, and that's about it. If it is touching the brass, you're going to get what's called hot spots on your brass. You're going to get more inconsistent anneals. So get it so it's just barely touching the brass, but not touching the brass at all. So why don't you go ahead and get that torch location set just right. And you can see Scott's positioning it so the hotter blue inner flame is just barely touching the brass, but not touching the brass. And it's pointing directly where the neck meets the shoulder. I'll see if I can get this a little bit closer here. So you can see this, the speed is way low. We're purposely doing that just so we can make sure we got this just set right. And that looks just about perfect, doesn't it, Scott?
Pretty close.
Now see, that's getting...
to see when the lights are going down.
Yeah, so you can see this is getting way over annealed. So we're going to dim the lights down here, so you can see that glow a little bit better. And we want that brass to drop out. That's way over annealed, so we're going to definitely speed that up. Why don't you speed it up to about in the high 30s there. So he's going to grab another piece of test brass. Why don't you move your test brass over there. And we want that brass to drop out of the flame just as it starts to glow. So right there it should be dropping out. So we need to speed that up just ever so slightly. Probably up to 39, maybe 40. And right there it starts to glow, probably 41. Probably 42. And you want the flame hot enough so it's a fast anneal. You don't want to be sitting there all day, and that's about perfect. Let's do one more piece of test brass. Right there, it just starts to glow. So I'll probably speed up to 43 and it should be good. So what Scott's going to do now is he's going to dump all that test brass. He's going to run this one last piece just to verify. Just starts to glow and drops out. So we're going to drop all that test brass. He's going to make sure he doesn't touch the flame head, the torch head, and the annealer. So once you got this set, make sure you don't bump your torch head. Now this is the actual brass that he's annealing. And we want this so it just starts to glow. And perfect. It is absolutely perfect. We're going to run one more piece. And it just starts to glow and drops out. That looks pretty good. I'll probably slow it down just a smidge. Probably down to 42. But you can see we're using test brass so we don't ruin the consistency of the anneal on the first piece, or the first couple pieces. So we're keeping an eye on the flame. We're making sure that the flame is staying consistent, 1 inch long. And this is kind of where we just kind of give her hell now. Everything looks good. We're going to turn the lights back on. It's just super important. Make sure you don't bump the torch head or the annealer. And this is where we just kind of give her hell. And let's count off this next anneal. 1 1000, 2 1000, 3 1000, 4 1000, 5 1000. It's almost 6 seconds. So you can try and get your anneals for 223 roughly around that 5-second mark. Usually your 308 parent cartridges might be somewhere in the roughly 6 seconds per anneal. We'll just say 6 seconds per anneal, 50 pieces here. Got 300 seconds. 300 seconds divided by 60 is 5 minutes. It's only going to take 5 minutes to anneal these 50 total pieces. And that's where having the torch head not mounted gives you that speed. You can just move it to where you want it. Move it, set it, and forget it. And you can see how easy this is once you get going. And once you get a method of your madness down, you learn how the EP 2.0 annealer is. Usually it only takes maybe 3 or 4 pieces of test brass to get the location of the flame just right, the heat of the flame, and your speed just right. So when you actually anneal that first piece of reloaded brass, that you only have to tweak this out ever so slightly. And we're keeping an eye on these anneal marks. So these anneal marks look very consistent. Now keep in mind, not all brass shows anneal marks the same. Brass that you just got done cleaning and drying, if it's absolutely fresh right out of the cleaner and you just dried it, brand new, freshly cleaned brass, it will barely show any anneal marks whatsoever. Brand new brass that hasn't been cleaned and has been sitting around a little bit and had a chance to oxidize, it'll show a nice, deep, rich anneal. And it just depends. Brass shows anneal marks differently. So just because it doesn't show a anneal mark doesn't mean it's not annealed. That's where the glow method comes into play. You're watching the physical brass heating up to the point where it glows and it's telling you, hey, it is annealed. Just because it doesn't show an anneal mark doesn't mean it's not annealed though, so keep that in mind. And some of you guys might be questioning, if you're actually new to the game, why do we anneal? And we anneal for a couple reasons. When you fire that round in the chamber, the brass expands. In this case, it's expanding 0.007 of an inch. And then it jacks out, and then we bump that brass back down 0.004 of an inch, and we put the body back into spec, the neck back into spec, we bump back the head space, and then we do that over and over. We reload it, we fire it, we reload it, we fire it, and that's called work hardening the brass, and it makes the brass brittle. And that's why you should be annealing. It softens the brass so you get less split necks. You get more longevity out of the brass, so it lasts longer. You can get an additional maybe 3 or 4 fires. And that's it. Last piece, just like that. And that's, in my opinion, especially if you're precision reloading, 50 to 100 pieces, you just really don't need a hopper, in my opinion. And just like that, we're done. So some things you may want to check out. Some of these are, I'm sure, are hot, but some of these are sure cooled down by now. So I'm going to grab, that one's definitely warm. So I'm going to grab 3 pieces here. And you can see how consistent that anneal is. I mean, we are talking very, very consistent anneals. The anneal mark is exactly 1/4 of an inch down the body of the brass. And they are all identical. I mean, that's where you should be using a machine to anneal. If you're trying to do this with a socket and a drill, I know some guys do that. I'm not saying you can't, but you're just not going to meet the consistency like you can with the machine. And that is where using a machine to anneal brass, like the EP 2.0 Annealer, that's where it really, really shines. So, so that's pretty much going to wrap up this part of teaching Scott how to reload. And I'm going to just double check some of your comments here before we wrap this up. Now keep in mind, the brass stopper is tremendously hot. Matter of fact, we even have a caution hot on the side of this stopper block. Just to remind you that this thing is smoking red hot. Make sure you're not touching that. And also, obviously, your brass is hot and your torch head is hot, so make sure you're careful of that. And I know some people question about this brass stopper being getting hot, and is it annealing the body of the brass? And if you check out that video on EP Integrations, the YouTube channel for EP Integrations, I have an example of purposely running the flame onto the brass stopper to the point where it's blazing red hot, and this thing is still blazing red hot, and it's only against this for 6 seconds. And in that example, I take it back off and it is not even marginally hot. So just like that, I wouldn't be able to pick this up if it was blazing hot, and it's definitely not affecting the body of the brass whatsoever. So keep that in mind. It's not annealing the body. It's only against that brass stopper for 5 to 6 seconds. And in that example, I even slow it down even further and got this so blazing hot, and then pick that brass up immediately. It's only annealing the neck of the brass itself. So let me check out some of your other comments here. Oh man, I gotta get some water here. I've been blabbering way too much. So Hemi Scrub saying, as soon as primers come back, I'm gonna buy some every paycheck just to have them. So Brian Marks saying, well, I see a big difference going to a auto trickle over my RCBS Chargemaster Light. Auto trickler over. So I'm not totally sure what you're saying there, Brian. Are you saying you're going with something different than the Chargemaster Light? I personally have never used a Chargemaster Light. I do have the Chargemaster 1500, and obviously I rarely use this anymore. I use the FX 120i. About the only time I ever use a Chargemaster anymore is if I have to weigh something really quick and fast, especially if I'm trying to set the powder dispenser for dropping powder on my progressive pistol reloading. That's about it. But the A&D FX 120i, where it really shines is obviously its accuracy, but it's not only that, but it's its speed. It's measuring within 0.02 grains of accuracy. And if one single speck of vargot powder weighs roughly 1.03 to maybe a little over 0.02 grains of weight, in essence, it's measuring within one speck of vargot powder. And it's very important, especially if you're shooting long distance. You know, if you're only shooting groups at 100, 200 yards, you might not see much difference. But if you're extending legs out to 800, 1,000 yards, especially if you're hitting a mile, when you're dropping powder within one speck, now we're not talking 0.02 grains. We're talking one literal speck of vargot powder. When you can get that much accuracy and precision out of that powder drop, you're going to get more consistent velocities. Your SDs will be much lower. But it's also just the speed. It can literally drop within one speck of vargot powder in roughly, I think, I'd have to double check. I think it was like 7 to 9 seconds. And it's just insanely fast, and you're just never going to do that with a Chargemaster. But keep in mind, you're talking something that costs, with all these upgrades, $1,200 compared to roughly $350. It's just a huge difference. So it's your success cover saying, Brian, well done, great shooter. Todd, get your butt out in the snow and shoot, man. There's no way I'm getting out there when it's negative 30 degrees. So Warren G saying, man, I want to get the Lyman case prep now. And it is an amazing product to have for the new reloader. Otherwise, I think that is about it. I think I'm going to wrap this up right here. Is there anything else you want to mention there, Scott, with regards to the next batch coming up here at all?
No, I think I'm learning a lot, and this is fun. This is fun for me. I hope it's fun for you guys to watch me learn, and hopefully
kind of learn together, right?
Hopefully we learn something that you didn't already know for those who have been doing this for a while.
Yeah, and I think that's what's kind of nice about this whole series is Scott's learning to reload, and maybe he has questions that some of you guys that are just getting into reloading, you're like, you know what, that's a good question, Scott. I'm glad you brought that up, and we can kind of all learn together, because this is truly how we're going to protect our rights. I've said this before, I'll say it again. Your vote only lasts 2 to 4 years, and it can always be canceled out. But there's something that you can't cancel, and that is knowledge. And I hope you're taking this information, this knowledge, and you're spreading that knowledge onto the next generation, because that's truly how we are going to protect our rights. And you're getting this information, you're creating your own adventure, your own methods, and you're teaching that to your children, and they can pass that on to the next generation and the generation after that, because that, my friends, is how we are truly going to protect our rights.